What's a girl to do? And she needs loving too, needs love too.
Philly's music leader. So listen up. WUSL Philadelphia, Power 99 FM, HD1, and iHeartMedia station.
George was living, breathing, talking until we see those officers restrain him while he's face down in handcuffs with Officer Chauvin having his knee lodged into his neck.
I'm taking steps to address concerns about long-standing violence and oppression against Pennsylvanians of color.
It's become increasingly clear to me that our administration and all those who are in public service really need to find a better way to listen.
I couldn't take care of George that day he was killed, but maybe by speaking with you today, I can make sure that his death will not be in vain. To make sure that he is more than another face on a t-shirt, more than another name on a list that won't stop growing.
All right, actually, man, Cosmic, Strictly Skills Kev. Man, listen, we are here. Shout out to the whole tri-state joining us. We're here for a special edition of Street Talk. We definitely have to have a really serious conversation about racism reform and reconciliation. Joining us is my girl, Loraine Ballard Morrill, Director of News and Affairs. Loraine, are you there?
I am here, Kev. It's good to be here, and this is a very important conversation. We are broadcasting live both on Power 99 and WDAS, and we're talking about race reform and reconciliation. This has been an amazing time of change, and we've got a bunch of folks here to have a conversation about where we go from here. Joining us via Zoom and on the air is Cynthia Figueroa, Deputy Mayor, Office of Children and Families. She's coordinating city efforts for the mayor's newly announced Committee for Reconciliation. Here, Bradford Gray, Chief Defender for the Defenders Association of Philadelphia. Andrea Lawful Sanders, columnist for the Philadelphia Sunday Sun and a diversity consultant. Pennsylvania State Representative Jordan Harris and City Councilwoman Maria Quinones Sanchez will be joining us. We also have with us on the line Leanna Yancey. She's a rising senior, and she's also part of a teen town hall that's happening on Friday on race. Let's talk about it, sponsored by Public Citizens for Children and Youth. And so what I'd like to do is jump right in, and let's start with you, Cynthia. You are part of this Committee for Reconciliation. The mayor says he needs to listen better, and this Committee for Reconciliation is one of the steps he's taking in that effort. What do we need to know about this committee, and what can we hear from you and the mayor and the committee that will ensure us that what comes out of this group will lead to measurable and concrete change?
Thank you, Loraine, and thanks for having me on today with all of you, and really honored to be with you. So I represent one of three of the folks on the staff who are supporting. So Marcel Pratt, who's the city solicitor, is one of my co-leads, as well as Nefertiri Stickout, who is the chief of diversity for the city of Philadelphia. And we just joined this amazing group who were just standing up. So we had our first meeting last week, and actually Representative Harris is part of that. And what I would say is that what was very clear in terms of this work is that it's not prescriptive, and certainly not in a position where we want to say that we were following this very clear pattern, but really wanted to hear from the experts in the community, and particularly experts on our steering committee, to really help guide the mayor in the city. And one of the first things that we heard was we need swift and bold action. And at the top of that agenda is police reform, as well as looking at the key area and elements of the impact of poverty in Philadelphia and how that translates into health disparities, education disparities, and really economy and other issues. So We actually have our next meeting tomorrow, and I would say I just want to give another shout out to Representative Harris. In a very short time, the steering committee, who had been named by that time, really pushed very hard, along with a group of state legislators as well as a few local city council members, to push for this police reform proposal, which the mayor has laid out some preliminary steps. So
I just want to, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I do want to ask you this. What kind of power does this committee have? In addition to allowing people to have conversations about what they'd like to see, what's the power? What's the empowerment for this group?
So the early part of the discussion with the group was, let's agree on some terminology. Let's make some swift action. I think one of the next conversations with this group is, what is the role in the future? One of the things that we're bringing to conversation, so sneak peek for tomorrow, is the budget, and questions and certainly that have arisen from the previous weeks around investments in our priorities. And so the intent of the administration right now is really to use the steering committee to truly advise and guide critical decisions both now and how do we think about some of the longer term impacts.
Okay, well, let's move on to, we'll get back to that in a sec, but here, Bradford Gray, it's so hard to convict police officers accused of crimes. Even when they're fired, oftentimes they are restored through arbitration. The Attorney General of Minnesota has even made an effort to manage our expectations when it comes to convicting Derek Chauvin and his fellow officers. Despite everything that we know about this case, what do you say about how we can get to true police accountability?
So let's start with why it's so hard to convict officers in the first instance. It's twofold. One, it's a cultural thing. And when you have officers being tried, they're being tried by juries who qualify to sit on a jury. So a lot of this, people who are judging the officers' actions are the ones that look at them as the protect and serve models. And they really have a hard time finding that level of crimen falsi, of criminal intent, in someone who they believed are really good people that had a bad day. They really get it in terms of making sure that someone doesn't get that type of criminal conviction. And so that's sometimes why you get certain outcomes. But secondly, the law is a little tricky in terms of the standards one may use in order to judge an officer's behavior. And this is what gives those jurors an out. The law in Pennsylvania is basically an officer can use deadly force if he reasonably believes a person is a danger to himself or others. Well, what goes into that reasonableness? A person's background, history, their record will all come into play. And an officer who has the benefit of the doubt, even by a jury, even some who look like me, will sit there and say and use that standard to justify why that person may have had that instance in that time. Now, there's been a lot of talk as to whether or not there's laws being passed in Pennsylvania to get reasonableness in that statute. It is my understanding it's already there. However, if they put the word reasonableness in it, that's still not going to cure our problems, because we're going to have to figure out a way to have a proper balance when you go into court. And an officer's record right now is expunged. So when an officer has an issue or or been founded to use abusive force, that officer's record currently is able to be sealed. And I know working with Jordan Harris and other state reps, there's some legislation. I think Chris Robb is trying to get legislation passed to make it more transparent in terms of an officer's record and behavior. Mm-hmm. But in terms of accountability, that is a whole action plan that I was happy to work with State Rep Jordan Harris on that and the other city members of City Council. And it engages 3 levels of things, and I'll let Rep Harris go into some more of it. But I will say this, at the local level, it really, really starts with transparency. And so we have databases where we're allowed to see every stop, and we use actually the police databases, but we track every stop and reasons why and what the outcome of that stop was. And we're seeing officers in certain neighborhoods who are stopping people, and this is over a span of a few years, about 1,300 times, and finding things on them like drugs or a weapon 30 times. And so here's an issue. This officer obviously is not good for that community. And so, but his actions are never taken into account when they're supposed to go into that very same community and protect them, but cannot go past a certain level of clearance rate because they've made enemies with everyone in the community that they want to engage. So these are things that we have to really work on all levels. So thank you for that question. I know it was long-winded, Loraine.
No, that was good. It's good. Very informative. Well, let's skip over to you and let's talk to State Representative Jordan Harris. We were talking about some legislation that's being proposed. And there's a lot of really good legislation that's being discussed. The governor has put himself behind legislation, but you're talking to a Republican-controlled legislature. How are you going to push through some of this stuff that you're talking about?
Well, first, let me thank you for hosting this and allowing us to use your platform to share this information. As Keir talked about, we brought together some state, local officials and some attorneys, and I'm gonna name them because it's a great group of people, and I don't want to get in trouble because everybody, they put their hard work into this. So it's myself along with Representatives McClinton, Dawkins, Kinsey, Bullock, Burgos, Cephas. Out in Pittsburgh, we had Austin Davis, Ed Gainey, Summerlee, and Jake Wheatley. Here in Philly, we also had Malcolm Kenyatta and Chris Rabb, along with our council members, Kendra Brooks, Kenyatta Johnson, Catherine Gilmore Richardson, Isaiah Thomas. We also worked with Chief Defender Keir Bradford Gray, attorneys Kevin Hardy and Kevin Mincy, and we put together what we call a police reform platform. And we're looking at 5 areas. One is things that the governor can do unilaterally. 2 are things that need to happen in the state legislature. 3 are things that the mayor can do unilaterally. 4 are things that city council can do. And the 5th one are things that need to change at the collective bargaining table. My view is we can't talk about police reform without talking about how we change a system that has flaws in it. If we don't actually talk about legislative fixes, we will find ourselves in the same situation a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. So we have to change the structure. So yes, the state house is controlled by Republicans, but let me tell you this: on Monday, led by one of my colleagues, Representative Summerlee, we staged an action in Harrisburg on the floor of the House of Representatives. And I don't think this ever happened in the history of the House of Representatives, but members of the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus and members of the Democratic Caucus joined and literally took control of the speaker's rostrum and did not let session go on as usual. Our thought was this: we will not continue to have business as usual until we address the issues of policing in this Commonwealth. So members stood. They would not let the speaker get up there. They wouldn't let folks get on the rostrum, and they begin to, speak. They shut off the microphones.
You caused a ruckus out there.
Well, yeah, they shut off the microphones. They shut off the TV. We had to stream it on our Facebook pages so people could see. But what that did was it brought attention to the issue on both sides of the aisle. So while folks were demonstrating, we went into a room with the Republican leadership and said, look, here are things that we want to see done. So we have an agreement on Monday at 8 a.m. The Judiciary Committee will take 2 bills and run them out of the Judiciary Committee that we have broad support on. One bill is around mental health testing for our law enforcement officers. Our law enforcement officers see a lot of things on the street, but they're not giving mental evaluation. So one thing is every other year, giving them a mental evaluation and within 30 days after using lethal force. The second thing, which gets to the hiring practices of our law enforcement, is that Representative Rabb's bill is going to be amended into a bill. And let me tell you this, Loraine, this bill has support from the Attorney General, the Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge number 5, the State Fraternal Order of Police, the Pennsylvania State Troopers, the District Attorneys Association, the Philadelphia Police Commissioner, and the Pittsburgh Police Commissioner. So we have law enforcement from all over who support the fact that there should be a database so that when complaints are filed against officers and they move to different districts, those complaints should follow them. Antoine Rose was shot and killed in Allegheny County. He was dismissed from a police department prior to being hired by another police department. But because there's no way to track that information, the new police department hired him without any information on what happened before. We believe if this was law 3 years ago, he would still be alive. So, we have to make systemic changes, which means we have to change our laws and how we address policing in the Commonwealth.
I'd like to turn to Andrea Lawful Sanders. You've worked with police districts, police, law enforcement. One of the most familiar chants that we heard in the protests around the world is there's no good cop in a racist system. So, we can always say, I know a good cop, most cops are good, but the system is what's broken. And I wonder, in your experience working with these police departments, what's your feeling about just the structure? Can it be changed? Can you really affect change? Or do we need to, as they say, some people are saying, defund police departments? What do you have to say about that?
So my thoughts around this, thank you, by the way. Good evening to all of you watching and those of you who are on the Zoom call. My thoughts around this is that the academy, when they first come into the academy, that structure has to change. They walk into the academy and the first thing they're taught is you're either going to be killed or be killed. You'd rather be judged by 12 than be carried by 6. And they also teach them very quickly in the academy that they cannot rat out each other. So they test them while they're in the academy to see how they would, react if something happens out of the street. That blue line is incredibly real. I would say in my 20 years of doing this work, wow, it's been a long time, that I have met quite a few good police officers who became complicit when they remained silent. And silent because when they opened their mouths to say something, they were literally tortured, right? They called for backup, no one was coming for them. They were given the horrible shifts. Their children were picked on. Just all sorts of crazy things that messed with their mental health. And so the other thing they talk about when we're doing training with them, because I have done ride-alongs, 12-hour ride-alongs. So I've seen some things out in the police departments when they're working. One of the other things that they tell you is, we don't have an opportunity to decompress. We'll walk and see a body, a head floating off of a body, and then we have somebody spitting at us as we're walking down the street after we're trying to help a child who was abused. And so they don't really know where they fit in the system, and they need support. What they've said is, if we go and ask for help or ask for help against the roll cops, we become the bad people. And so I know police officers that have quit being police officers instead of staying in the force, but then there are way more who remain silent because they're hoping they can do something to change the system. And that's why they say there's no good cop in a racist system, but there are some really good ones. They just don't know what to do. So I would say really restructure how the academy looks. They also will tell you that they're taught to shoot to kill. No police officer is taught to shoot in the leg or shoot in the arm. They teach you to shoot right in the body cavity. And so there's no way, most of the time, whoever they're shooting at is going to be killed. They are very aware of the corrupt ones. And so we need to support them in making sure that we weed them out. So these bills that they're talking about that would follow them with each time they have an infraction, each time they shoot someone, each time there are plenty of those there too that have biases. I've spoken to police officers who said they've never met a Black person that they trusted or a Black person that they think could do anything outside of high school. When you walk around with that thought process and you're going into communities, it's no wonder you see what you see, right? So that's where I am with that.
Okay. Let's go to City Councilwoman Maria Quinones Sanchez. You were one of 14 City Council members who signed a letter to Kenny about the police department and the mayor's proposed budget increase. And you had some heft. You guys got the thing to move around. So the mayor has decided to step back from that increase. Tell us more about what City Council's role is in this whole conversation.
So thank you, Loraine, and thank you to all the guests and the folks on the Zoom call. This is a conversation that many of us have been having for many, many years, and I want to put in context that letter because the letter really just memorialized public hearings, some legislation that has been pending in conversations for a long time, many who have been adopted through the plan, through the state and city collaboration that Representative Harris talks about. As a member of the police oversight, people forget that the Justice Department came into the city of Philadelphia at the request of Nutter and Ramsey and really put forth a list of recommendations that said we have a structural racial issue, we have a bunch of issues, and there was a police oversight that was charged and was led by Provost Epps from Temple University, and many lawyers and civic leaders that really were charged with implementing those recommendations. And we did a lot of work around that. What was missing and continues to be missing, which is why we're having this conversation, was the comprehensive reporting and public accountability. Because if I spent hundreds of hours along with Councilman Jones, who's from public safety, in the training where we talked about de-escalation, use of force, all of those things. But if you don't have the comprehensive reporting and public accountability, you can't measure it, right? So if it's not measured, it's not managed. And I think to the point that in the letter, we talk a lot around the different pieces of items that are in the mayor's purview. Last year, the mayor committed that he would open up the whole arbitration process and that we would have an input. COVID happens. He renews the contract. That public discussion is taken away from us about, the arbitration and the problems around the holding police accountable. But to the point of some of the guests, it's about the recruitment. And I said this today, we had hours of testimony with Commissioner Outlaw. How we do psychological and testing, all of that has to be revamped, right? Who decides who's culturally, linguistically competent to serve in these communities? We have allowed and we've advocated that responsibility to testing, that testing world that we know is not adequate. We can test for racial biases, and we should. As the same way we try to measure character and all of the other things that we need in police officers. So I think that, again, we have to make sure that we really utilize this open space and opportunity to address it at a root, so that coming from the door, we've had problems in the city of Philadelphia with the recruitment, the lack of diversity in the recruitment, the lack of ability for folks to be promoted up the ladder, accountability for those who are here, and then enforcement. And Ramsey, who co-chaired Obama's community policing strategy, said it. He fired somebody in Philadelphia twice, and a person still got his job back. So there's a lot of work to be done, but I think the letter that Councilman Kenyatta Johnson laid out that we all signed on to was really a compilation of the work and the public conversations we had, and now we have a political space to hold our mayor and ourselves accountable to doing all of those things.
I'd like to turn to a young person. A lot of times when we have these conversations, we forget to ask the young folks what they think and how they feel about what's been going on. And a lot has been going on over the last couple of weeks. Leanna Yancey, you're a rising junior at Central and also involved in a town hall that's going to happen on Friday about race. And I wonder if you can just kind of tell us, how do you feel? I mean, in your heart, how do you feel about everything that's happened? Are you feeling hopeful about change, or are you cynical about change? What do you think?
I'm hopeful for change because I feel like the youth has such a strong voice when it comes to these current issues. I feel like especially because we're out of school right now, it really amplifies the time that we have to take a position on these issues.
And you had a chance to do a little protesting yourself, right?
Yes, last week I went to a silent protest down at 440. It was orchestrated by the teachers and educators.
Mm-hmm. How did that feel?
It felt very powerful because there was just so many people there. And I think people really understood that the root of a lot of these problems is education. I feel like it all starts in the classroom. We need to be educated about how to handle these situations and just how to prevent them.
Well, we'll get back to you in just a second, but I know, Cynthia Figueroa, you have to leave shortly. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to tell us, what can we do as citizens to get involved in the process that you're involved with, which is this Committee for Reconciliation? Can anyone be a part of it? How do we get involved?
So I think there's going to be several ways, and we've talked about a community engagement strategy that can be both transparent, but really connects with the community. So I think one of the early pieces of feedback is we can't just do listening sessions. The community has spoken and has made their voice heard very loudly, and youth have also spoken. And so how we curate and listen is really important in terms of how we report back in our own accountability. So that's just in terms of very simplistic view of community engagement. But I think that what's happening now that's incredibly helpful is that the critical feedback that besides all the voices that we've heard over the last several weeks, we really need to be pushed. We have to be pushed, and we have to push for reform. We have to hear the things that are very hard to say. I think the councilwoman shared some very concrete steps and the things that were laid out. Now, I guess what I would tell the community and folks listening, now is not the time to hold back. I think now is the time to be really honest and not sugarcoat anything. And I think we've seen that, and we need to continue to see it.
And so how do we do that? How do we tell you what it is that we're thinking, how we feel, what we think will mean change? Are there some specific things that people can do? Are there meetings that are being held? Is there a website people can go to? Tell us more.
Yes, so I know the PCCY Town Hall is happening on Friday, which is a great one. I also know that Urban Affair Coalition is actually hosting another youth town hall on Friday as well, and the information on their website. Dr. Haidt, the police commissioner, and the mayor are doing a session tomorrow with school district student leaders to hear them. And then we're going to be reaching out through members of the steering committee in terms of involvement. In terms of questions, certainly folks can always contact us through the city. And we've been hearing through representatives, through both council, both through city individuals who are interested in reaching out. And so
if I, Loraine Ballard Morrill, citizen of Kensington, wants to find out how I can be a part of this, or I can give you my feedback, tell us.
Yeah, I think the general number that has been offered for everything related to questions in the city is 311. So I would say 311 would be a basic resource to ask about how do I get information about the work that the city is doing. I would say that we're really, really early on in the process. And so we haven't stood up like a hotline or anything like that I could give you a different number for right now. But I would say that is really important. But I would just say that being a critical voice and pushing and giving us all the ideas, because we've seen how those really hard and excellent ideas can come into action.
Well, I'd like to, we're taking a break. I want to thank you, Cynthia Figueroa, Deputy Mayor, Office of Children and Families, coordinating city efforts for the mayor's newly announced Committee for Reconciliation. Here, Bradford Gray, Chief Defender for the Defenders Association of Philadelphia. Andrea Lawful Sanders, columnist for the Philadelphia Sunday Sun and diversity consultant. Pennsylvania State Representative Jordan Harris, and City Councilwoman Maria Quinones Sanchez, representing the Eastern North Philadelphia 7th Council District. Leanna Yancey, who's a rising senior at Central High School. We're going to take a break. We're having a town hall. We're simulcasting on Power 99 and WDAS. This is a town hall about racism, reform, and reconciliation. Cosmic Kev, take us out.
Yeah, we need to hear from you guys right now. Hit us on the lines, 215-263-6699. Comments accepted. Let's go. It's 9-9.
Philly's Power 99 is all about getting Philly back up and running. And this back to business update from Comcast Business celebrates the reopening of Blue Soul Shoes, 1805 Chestnut in Center City. Dolly's Boutique, 6778 Germantown Avenue. Gaffney's Fabric, 5401 Germantown Avenue. Victoria's Kitchen, 7304 Ogott's. ShopRite at Fox and 52nd Street. And Jonesy's Accessories in Cherry Hill. Comcast Business supports Philly as we get back to business. From Philly's Power 99.
Regardless of where you are.
I got hip hop every day.
Yeah. Keep it real, Philly.
Every day.
Take Power 99 with you everywhere. Download the new iHeartRadio app today. Broadcasting from the Attorney Big Al Studio.
Hip hop. Hey, DJ, turn this up.
We are Philly's Power 99.
Turn it up.
In the fight against COVID-19, we are grateful to those treating disease on the front lines every day. This is Lorena Marshall-Blake, Vice President of Community Affairs at Independence Blue Cross, reminding us that there are also others keeping us strong and healthy. In our neighborhoods and communities, we see essential workers in post offices, sanitation, and public transportation. Still others in food markets, delivery services, restaurant takeout, and more. Throughout the region, volunteers are organizing food donations, assisting those in need, and arranging safe visits.
Sorry, Johnny. Yeah, you want to join this one? No, you want to keep that one?
Our physical and mental well-being in this challenging time. For more, visit ibx.com/COVID-19. Together, they are helping us to beat COVID-19.
Philadelphia is showing its gratitude for the class of 2020.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Black Thought from The Roots. I just want to say, before any of the awards or accolades, I began.
And I can talk to them? Oh, good. Okay. I wanted to make sure I wasn't putting you on the air by mistake. Okay. So that's right. Okay. So we got 5 minutes and 13 seconds, 10 seconds, 5 seconds. Okay. 5 minutes. Okay. So Kev is working on phone calls. Okay. All right. All right. So I should just, is he going to bring us up?
He'll bring you up, but
Me talk? Okay.
So that's your exact countdown.
All right, cool. All right.
Anything else technically you need?
No, I think we're good. All right.
Sorry about that. The private screen went blank.
Oh, okay.
And then that's why I had to stop.
Yeah, yeah.
But then it came right back.
Okay, good. All right, so far so good.
But, I'm recording it from Pride 1. Didn't catch it from the beginning, but
Yeah.
and I do see, I saw you on Facebook.
Yes.
On Power Social. So
Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Let's see if anybody has any questions. Okay, we can talk amongst ourselves. We have 3 minutes and 55 seconds. Is there any?
I think we might still be live on Facebook.
Oh, well then, that's okay. So are there things that, hello people on Facebook. If there's anything else that you guys want to talk about, then let's do it. Okay, so I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to talk about what you think we need to go from here. What is it, what are the resources? What are the action steps that we can take as individuals and as a community?
So one of the first things that I want to talk about, and I believe Chief Defender Keir Bradford Gray will agree with me on this, is when we start to have a conversation with Dr. Height and the police commissioner, please be aware that oftentimes the very first contact that young people have with the police are through the schools, that our children are being penalized because of infractions and being put into the system where they end up revisiting it over and over again until they become adults. And so I want them to have a conversation at the school district level about what should happen to children when they are being punished. There's a youth court, there's all sorts of other diversionary practices that we can use. Sometimes it's as simple as asking them what in the Sam Hill is going on with them. We tend to judge them sight unseen and unilaterally dole out punishment to them. So I believe the school district has a part in this too. Because the children are just so traumatized. And I keep having these conversations with the young people about how the disciplinary actions in schools are so uneven. Children of color make up the majority of the suspensions and detention, and the majority of the children being let out by police. And they will constantly tell you that their peers, their white peers, are not being let out at the same rate. Those white peers will get their parents to come and pick them up, or they'll get a suspension, and the Black children are put into detention centers. As young as 9 years old have been locked up by police. It's insane, and we have to figure out a way to adjust how we move when we're working with young people.
Yeah, restorative justice practices at the school district are hugely important. I was one of the advocates to move away from zero tolerance, and when we found kindergarten kids getting suspended, so I think that's true. I just want to be able to add before we close that tomorrow there will be a package of bills that council is going to introduce. Many of my colleagues have worked really hard on this, so I just want to be able to at least end on people need to stay tuned because there's a lot coming, including a Citizen Police Oversight Commission charter change. change. So the tide has changed. I've been a co-sponsor on that legislation twice, and we have not been able to get it through. It's a different time, and that'll get introduced along with the whole package of use of force and other things in council. But yeah, zero tolerance at the school district and restorative justice practices is a huge issue.
Mm-hmm. And Loraine, I want to talk about just quickly where this notion of defunding the police come from and where some of the things that people are looking at.
Yeah.
Actually do. I don't know if you want to do it now or you want to do it when we get back on, but school resource officers are one of the things. Do we need to fund that entity, or do we need to bring back social workers and other people that can handle?
And bye. Sorry. Okay.
Philly's Power 99 is all about getting Philly back up and running. And this back to business update from Comcast Business celebrates the reopening of Blue Soul Shoes, 1805 Chestnut in Center City. Dolly's Boutique, 6778 Germantown Avenue. Gaffney's Fabric, 5401 Germantown Avenue. Victoria's Kitchen, 7304 Ogots. ShopRite at Fox and 52nd Street. And Jonesy's Accessories in Cherry Hill. Comcast Business supports Philly as we get back to business from Philly's Power 99.
My name is your man Cosmic Strictly Skills Kev. You are in a special edition of Street Talk. We are talking about racism, reform, and reconciliation in the city. Joining me is a lot of important people. Loraine Ballard Morrill, and let me tell you, I gotta go to these lines. I have to go to these lines.
Let's do it.
People are definitely talking.
Okay.
You're a special edition of Street Talk. What's your name? Who's this?
I'm a Philadelphia police officer, and I was just listening to your radio station of your town hall.
Okay.
Loraine Ballard Morrill, and I was listening basically to what they were saying, and some of the things they were saying were very good, but then some of the things they were also saying were not true. I don't know if you want to know, but in reference to recruitment, we are not taught to kill. We're taught to incapacity. So there's a if they've never been through the training course or didn't talk with the recruitment unit or to go into the training bureau, then I really don't believe that if you don't do your research, then you can't get the correct answer. But trust and believe, we are not taught to kill. There's a lot of good cops that are out there. There's a lot of good cops that are in the community, including myself. You know, when the pandemic started, there's a lot of us police officers that went to the senior centers to deliver food to the seniors. They don't know about that. They don't know about the police officers that are teaching the GREAT program and the DARE program that deal with children every day, all day, that one of the police officers have a separate cell phone that all her kids has her phone number. So if there's something wrong, they can call her if they have a question. They don't know about that because they don't ask. You know, I've been on the department for a while. And when we see cops doing the wrong thing, yes, some of us do tell. Yes, sometimes there is a backlash. Yes, sometimes we are held accountable for it. But trust and believe, there's a lot of good cops, and the good cops are getting the bad rap from the bad cops. And I don't think that's fair. If you're going to be fair all the way around. Don't just call it all bad cops when we're not all bad cops.
Okay, baby, what's your name?
My name is Renee.
Thank you for calling. We appreciate your comment.
Well, Kev, you know, I totally agree. I know a lot of great cops, and most cops are fantastic. We're not talking about individual cops. We're talking about the system. But I wonder if any of our guests want to jump in and respond to that caller.
I would just add, you know, I never thought as a council person I would need to have the kind of relationship I have with the commanding officers in the police districts, and I know for Jordan Harris and all the other elected officials. Nobody wants an accountable system or as much as good police officers, right? This accountability is about them. If you took the oath of office, you want to protect and you want to serve and you want to do it right. And that's why we got to fix the system, so that you don't get this generalization, but there's a recognition of why people took that oath of office. So we're agreeing with her.
Right.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about something that we were talking about off camera, and that is the whole thing about defunding police departments. What does that even mean?
Yeah. So I think it's really an emotional cry of people who are fed up with this current state of affairs, and that they cannot, no matter what we do, training, this, that, recruitment, we can't seem to infiltrate this bad culture that exists in some areas with some police people, officers, that don't tend to go towards public safety, but more go to the denigration of communities and the life opportunities of individuals. And so defund the police just means chip away at things that are not working towards public safety. And so some of the things that I've been sitting down and talking with people about are this notion of what Councilwoman Maria Quinones-Sanchez said. Who is qualified to be a police officer? Well, who makes that decision? And why not be creative in this moment, right? And look into these communities where they have really stellar pillars of the community who are trusted advisors, swear them in as deputies and have them help and take on part of that patrol. Pay them to do that. And there's ways that you can do things like that. You know, Act 235 can kick in. They can have their own insurance liability, whatever it takes to move past this moment of policing where you have police service in areas where cops are stopping people so many times and they are not held accountable for the devastation they cause. I'll give you a really good instance. I have a friend, a really good friend, whose son has never had a criminal record, never had any instances with the law. During a pandemic, he was sitting outside of his home, parked, but his car was running. He had his cell phone charged, and he was drinking out of a red Solo cup. And the cop stopped him, went over to his red Solo cup, looked in it, said, "What's in here?" and decided that he was going to charge him with DUI during a pandemic. Now, this is an officer that's going into this neighborhood that he wouldn't go into Chestnut Hill and do that, and bringing someone into the system unnecessarily, but we're paying for that. And so when we don't have officers that really know how to protect and serve certain communities, maybe we need to think of a whole new option that we can have for people who can be out there, who will take their responsibilities seriously and who are trusted and knows how to defuse situations. I know a good person, they would call an old head, that would have walked up to him and said, "Hey, young boy, I know you're not going to take off, right?" And he would say, "No, I'm good." "Okay, make sure you don't take off." "All right." I mean, that sounds like, like it's not pragmatic, but it's true.
No, it's true. I think what you're saying is it's really also about community policing. When
there you go.
Actually understand each other, where the police officer knows that the guy who's selling Lucy's on the corner is just a part of that neighborhood. He's not hurting anybody, and it's not a problem. Whereas if you don't know who these people are, then there's a tendency to jump and maybe make actions that end badly.
I'm going to say this. I think it goes beyond community policing, because it goes to now trusted individuals who don't want to do more harm than good to their communities. And so when you are a police officer, when all you have is a hammer, you tend to look at things as a nail. And that is the way that things are processed, and people are spit out worse than they came in. Mm-hmm. I think it's time for a more creative option. And because defund the police is not going away. Right. And in these schools, why do we need so many police officers at the expense of other therapeutic services? Mm-hmm. These kids are kids. I did things in school that I would never be arrested for back then that I would be arrested for now. And if I were to be a kid now, I could not be a lawyer. It cuts off my opportunities being involved in this system.
All right. So, now Kev has got some folks on the line. Kev, you got some people on the power lines? Kev, can you hear me? Whoop. I don't know if Kev can hear me, but in any case, well, then we're going to just jump to you, Andrea. What do you think about all of that? I think that, it's more than community policing. Yeah, but
Claire has a point. In Upper Darby Township right now, they have a police department, and they have a segment where there are regular citizens running police hubs. And in those police hubs, the regular citizens come in and they talk to the citizens come in and they talk to this regular person. I'm looking at his face right now. They come in and they report what's going on in their community. They talk to him. They give him tips on what's happening. And because the people trust him, he's not a police officer at all, but they put him in a hub where people can come to him and talk to him about what's going on. I would love to see something like that happen in other communities, because it works very well over there. I agree with you, Kier. It goes a little bit beyond that, but community policing is absolutely important. Knowing who your community is makes a difference. Makes a difference.
Jordan Harris, just talk to us a little bit more about what we can expect to see in the next week or so, all the work that you're doing with your colleagues out there. What is it that we're going to be seeing? What can we see?
Well, so the governor has agreed to do some of the things that were in our proposal. One was create a deputy inspector that would have oversight responsibilities for the state police. The mayor has also agreed to do the same thing. The mayor actually agreed to do several things. One being the deputy inspector general. I want to tell you why that's important. It's important because under the inspector general's office, they would have subpoena power, which means that they can actually get documents and do review. One of the best things and best ways that I think you get to police accountability is by having transparency. Folks have to be able to see what's going on behind that blue line. They have to be able to get in and see what's going on. In addition to that, the mayor has agreed to some increases in transparency amongst the complaints so folks can see where the complaints are. Think about it this way. If you have one police district that has a high number of complaints, why aren't we looking at the command in that police department? Why aren't we going into that police department and that police district to see what's going on there? You can't do that if there's no way to collect that data to see what is actually happening. There are other things, reestablishing the residency requirement. When we're talking about, people going into communities and being able to talk to folks, well, the first thing you have to do is you have to be a part of the community. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that police need to live in the district that they patrol. Maybe that's not the best thing, but when you're a part of a community and you have to be in this community, in this neighborhood, you treat folks differently. When you get in your car and drive out to Cheltenham and to all of these other places, you're not as concerned about the people that you're policing. Listen, we understand that they're good cops. I'm sure everybody on here is either related to somebody that's an officer, got a cousin, a homie, a friend, or somebody that's in the police department. But what I can tell you is that all of those police officers that are doing the right thing, they want more accountability. There was a town hall out in Pittsburgh with Black police officers, and Black police officers are catching hell more than anybody. Because not only are they police officers, but they're Black. So they get treated a certain way, even inside the police department, right? So when it comes time to get promoted and moving up and all of that kind of stuff, Black police officers are catching hell. So I understand what's going on and sympathize and say that's the reason why we need to create these types of oversight and accountability so that we know what's going on so that we can address those things. The one thing I will say that has to happen, it's one of the biggest things, is we have to change Act 111, okay? Act 111 is the state law that talks about how we do collective bargaining and arbitration. What has happened for far too often is that the police department sees something wrong, they fire the person's out of work for a year or two or whatnot, they go to arbitration, the person gets their job back, and they get back pay. So all of these things that you see, on tape and all of that, it won't get better unless we change Act 111 and how we deal with arbitration so that when these things happen, we can actually see justice with regards to how folks are disciplined. It must change.
Kev, can you hear me? I guess Kev is still working on getting some phone calls. I do want to turn to Leanna. You're involved in something that's happening on Friday. It's a conversation about race that's sponsored by Public Citizens for Children and Youth. Tell us what that is.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, it's a discussion with the youth about race and our personal experiences surrounding it, and then we're talking about the steps that we can take to basically have a seat at the table about these discussions. And so if anybody's tuned in right now, you can go on Facebook to the PCCY page, and the event is called Teen Town Hall and Race, and you can sign up there if you would like to be part of the discussion.
Okay, good to know. I'd like to go around and just ask everybody just to reflect on these past couple of weeks. What has this meant to you all personally? I think everyone has been moved in a particular way, and I'm just fascinated to hear what your thoughts are about what has occurred. Have we really changed the course of things happening in this country? Are we beginning to really address the deeply inbred racism that is really very much a part of the fabric of this country? Andrea, I'll let you start.
So it's interesting that you said that. I was just interviewed by a reporter from WHYY who was very interested in what's going on in the counties, Montgomery, Bucks, Delaware County. And he asked me if I thought that things were shifting and changing. And my answer to him was simply this. The young people are working and moving towards change as quickly as they know how to. However, there's still an elite group that are in power that are insistent that we continue to malign and marginalize whole groups of people, no matter how many degrees we have, no matter what we've done. And so for me, I am watching America slowly twist and change and at the expense of our psyches. And so I'm wondering how much longer will we go before we start to see a tangible change beyond police departments? Because everyone's focused on the police right now, but let me tell you, this is going on in real high places. No matter what we do, you can be a congressperson, and I'm very concerned about people who call themselves liberals, but literally are wearing hoods on their heads as they malign and try to keep people back from doing what they're supposed to do to move forward in this country. I can't get any plainer than that.
All right, before we continue with that line of thinking, we've got a caller. Ready, Kev? Go for it.
Nah, you're in a special edition with Street Talk. You got a comment?
Yes. My name is Apollo, man. I was listening to the radio station. I have a couple of friends and family members that are police officers. And I'll tell you, when they was talking about mediation, I've learned from them, and also even looking up on Google, that police officers, they get 110 hours learning how to self-defense and combat and training with firearms, but they only have 8 hours of mediation training and conflict resolution. So it does seem like they're literally being trained to just push around and mistreat people, and especially the people they're targeting is the minorities, the people that's in areas that have more of have more minorities where they're taking over. So it's like they're in its minorities areas more, so they see stuff, and of course they're going to react to it, and a lot of them, they're scared. They're scared of black people. They're scared just off initial intimidation. It's not something we did, but it's just something that they get intimidated by us. We're in a whole group. They think that we're up to no good. You got white people, the whole group, they just kind of walk past them. But, they always double check on the guy. All right. But I just wanted to call in and I wanted to put that out there. I was doing some research earlier today, and it's just, it really is sad, because I know they're funded by our money, our taxpayers' money, and for us to be paying to just get pushed around and mistreated, it's really ridiculous, and it's absurd that this is still going on, and for so long. And it's like every new situation, they're acting like it's something new. Like they don't know that it's the same. It's always around the same aspect. A black man or a black woman being mistreated by an officer. But yeah.
All right, bro, man. Thanks for your call.
Yeah. Well, the weariness of his voice is so clear. I mean, this is life, everyday life, having to deal with this layer of racism, of having to be alert and not knowing if you step out for a gallon of milk, if you have to dress up with a coat just to make sure that you can get to the corner store without being harassed. It's a thing. Maria, you wanted to say something? Oh, I think you're still muted somehow. Let's see if we can unmute you. Okay, while we're waiting for Maria. Oh, here we go. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to quickly respond to that, to the caller, but then go back to a point that I think it's important that we don't miss out on this. I think the training issue is important. That's why the recruitment and throwing out the playbook and making sure what is cultural competency, police officers, and there's a power dynamic that is ingrained in our system, and they don't know what they don't know, right? I was a part of a group, and we sued the police department in Reading because Reading had some of the most serious abuses, right, from their police department. And what we found is, most of the police force came from the military. They did never seen people of color. I mean, so a lot of this stuff is ingrained. So you're right. We got to spend and invest a lot more in the training aspect of it, but we have to do it in the front end, and then the accountability and with the ongoing training. You know, as an Afro-Latina, a mother of 2 brown boys and a grandmother of 2 brown boys, I feel a sense of urgency, right? And one of the things that I appreciate as this has been happening, my son who just graduated from college, class of 2020, you know, every day we've had this real big debate around what we're doing, is it enough? And I tell you that we have to not only listen to folks, but really use this opportunity in this political space to go to the root of it. Cynthia mentioned the issue of poverty, the issue of the power dynamics, the issue of inclusion. We talked about police officers having to be a member of the community. All those things are important. And tomorrow, City Council is going to introduce many, many different measures by many of my colleagues who all put us on that course there. We're going to have a charter change for the Citizens Police Oversight Commission, the residency requirements, some of the use of force, all of those things. But ultimately, laws are one thing. How we operationalize and how we change the culture. If we don't want a police state, we have to debundle the role and the power that we've given the police department in our neighborhoods. If there's an L&I problem, I don't need a police officer. If there's a street problem, I don't need a police officer. For everything in the city of Philadelphia, it's the police first. You got to close down the street, it's a police car. So really it's an opportunity, and some of the defund the police is about that, is how much money and power we've given over to one institution, and then all of the systematic flaws that exist within it. So we got a lot of work to do. I think there's a lot of energy, and you know, again, the collaboration between the city and the state has never been better. So I feel pretty comfortable that we're going to move these things, but we have to make sure that we address the systemic issues. The police department is just one. We had similar situation in the fire department. We were under a consent decree. What are the structural issues in government, right? Because we can't ask others to do what we're not willing to do ourselves and hold ourselves accountable to.
All
Thank
right.
you.
We are running out of time, unfortunately, and I want everyone to get a quick, so are you optimistic, pessimistic? Are we going to move forward, Care? Yes or no?
I am optimistic because you don't make this kind of showing if you're not willing to give something up for radical change. And I think we need to be bold and we need to be creative. And it's not just a matter of training. Get a new model in these communities. And we have to address the criminal justice system, Loraine. That is a legal way to discriminate against people, and we have to address it.
Okay, Jordan, quick.
The motto of the state of South Carolina is simply, while I breathe, I hope. And I really believe that. I do want to say this before we move on. We would not be in this moment if it hadn't been for all of the activists who took time to go into the streets and push the envelope, push the needle, create civil unrest. So, you know, all of us as elected officials and appointed officials who have been trying to get this stuff done, it's the activists and the folks on the ground who are pushing people to now address the concerns. So shout out to all of the activists. But while I breathe, I hope.
All right. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. I'm being told that we gotta go. So I just want to thank you all for joining us today. Care Bradford Gray, Chief Defender of the Defenders Association of Philadelphia, Andrea Lawful Sanders, who is columnist for the Sunday Sun and a diversity consultant, Pennsylvania State Representative Jordan Harris, City Councilwoman Maria Quinones Sanchez, representing the 7th Councilmanic District, Leanna Yancey, who's a rising senior and also participating in a teen town hall this Friday, sponsored by PCCY. Cynthia Figueroa was with us earlier, Deputy Mayor of the Children and Families, coordinating Philadelphia's Reconciliation Steering Committee. Kev, take us out.
You know what it is, 9-9.
Philly's Power 99 is all about getting Philly back up and running. And this back to business update from Comcast Business celebrates the reopening of Blue Soul Shoes, 1805 Chestnut.
That was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Welcome. I really appreciate being a part of this. Thank you so much, Councilwoman.
Thank you, lady. You know, I'm a fan. Thank you.
Same here. And let me tell you, Leanna, my daughter just graduated from Central today. And so Nile Gray. And so
Oh, I know her.
So yeah, before
that's
you
so
all,
cool.
before
I'm a
you
Central
all,
mom.
before you all get off, I run a radio show on WURD. I need one of you or all of you to show up on my radio show on Tuesday or Thursday to talk about how the mayor is going to choose who the people are that's going to sit on this, whatever this is that they're getting ready to do.
We're starting to shape it. The reconciliation, they already have selected folks as part of this process, but the citizen-led oversight, all of those conversations are just at the beginning. So we want to hear the input. The legislation will require public hearings, and we expect your voices to come forth and you know, tell us who should be on there. Obviously, youth voices, citizen voices, legal advocacy voices, all of those are necessary.
Okay.
I just have to introduce the person standing behind me who's so tall.
So tall.
It's
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Oh, I know him.
Yes.
Hard to see. I'm bending. Like I can see better if I bend.
Having discussions like these are part of what make us, you know, who we are with regard
That's
to
right.
So I just appreciate everybody being part of it.
Oh, you're quite welcome, DC.
And this is, as I call her all the time, this is the GOAT. So
Yes,
we
she
can't
is.
do anything without Loraine. I appreciate everybody's help. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all. Thank you to our Facebook watchers. And listen, just finally, because some people are still watching, is there anything that you want to say of what we can do, anything those watchers can do? What would you say?
You know, I want us to feel the angst and feel the anger, but I also want us to start having honest conversations around what can we possibly do in our own spaces, not just be angry, right? How can we be a part of things that are happening, the reconciliation committee that the mayor is having, whatever's happening at the state level with the governor. How do you want to run? What do you want to run for office? What do you want to do? How would you step up to support the people that are already in office? What do you want to do? Like really sit down and think beyond pontificating and, you know, really work on emotionally intelligent conversation that won't have people dismissing you because you're so all over the place. Like really work on yourself so you can figure out where you fit in this new part of history, because life as it is in America will never be the same after this.
I think that's right. I think that's right. I think things will never be the same.
I think one of the discussions that's going to be hugely important, because we'll have to have sensible conversation, is, you know, we need our allies to be good allies. And part of that is don't tell us how we feel. You know, I'm an Afro-Latina, and I've had some conversations with folks where people want to have the conversation because they're ready. I'm like, we live the conversation every single day. Part of being a good ally is letting us talk through this. And holding the institutions accountable as they live and breathe in their own privileged spaces, right? Because it's easy to and again, we appreciate those protests were impactful because of its diversity, but how we move forward on this, everybody has to hold themselves accountable in their spaces. To your point, not everybody is going to be an activist and a protester, but everybody has a space where they can really help promote and move these conversations along.
Mm-hmm. Here, any final words?
Yeah, and mine is going to go towards the justice system. Of course,
yes.
On that structure has to really be understood. There's communities that are getting involved right now called the Participatory Defense Hubs that are breaking down those structures, and they need volunteers. There are about 7 Participatory Defense Hubs across the city right now, and they are doing what we call Know Your Systems training. It's a non-transparent system that could really eat you up if you don't understand how to navigate it. The documentary, When They See Us, what happened to those kids was because those parents did not understand that system and understand what rights they had. And so these are things that are truly important, because this justice system brands us with a lifetime conviction that we can't get rid of, but only holds us back. And that has to be looked at. 900 legislative acts that allow people to legally discriminate against people with criminal records. If that ain't Jim Crow, I don't know what is.
Mm-hmm. And Jordan, anything else you want to add?
I think my comments are to the allies is to really be allies. I've had a lot of my friends, my white friends, reach out to me and say, what could I do? What could I, how could I help? And I want them to hold elected officials accountable, just like you want me to hold elected officials accountable on all of the issues that you care about. You care about the environment. You care about animals. You care about all of this other stuff. And that's cool, because I care about that stuff too. But I want you to care about my humanity, right? I want you to care as much about the environment. I want you to care about my humanity that much. And I want you to care so much that you'll pick up the phone, call your elected official, and tell them that they need to care about my humanity. That's how people, because, and you know, I think that's the thing people got to understand that we're talking about. Like, and I guess that's where I'm at a point where it's just like, there's no negotiating on some of this stuff. Like, some of these things are not, like, I'm not negotiating on my humanity. I was born a black man. I'm a live a black man. I just don't want to die because I'm a black man. But like, I'm always going to be a black man. I'm done negotiating on my humanity, right? So I need my allies to feel the same passion and be like, we're not gonna negotiate on somebody's humanity. So that's how I feel some of our allies can help us in this struggle.
Leanna, anything you want to add to all that?
I just think it's important for the youth to know that just because they can't actually go out and vote doesn't mean that their voice isn't heard. You can protest, you can sign petitions, you can get in contact with elected officials. Your voice is important and your opinions matter. And I think that we need to be the last generation to deal with this. We cannot let George Floyd become another hashtag. We cannot let this movement lose momentum, and we cannot let up.
Wow. Love that.
That's beautiful. What a way to end. I want to thank you all so much. This is really awesome. And we will probably post this somewhere on our different websites. But I want to thank you all so much. You all were fantastic. And let's all stay in touch. And,
Yes.
you know,
Thank you, Loraine.
let us know what you're doing so we can continue to communicate that, because you are doing some awesome work, all of you. And I'm especially proud of Leanna. You did a wonderful job. You really did. I love it. Yeah. All right, I'm going to let you go. And thank you so much once again.